We're back with Let's Talk Leadership, and I'm talking with Nina Sampat from Staples, Canada. Nina, before the break, we talked a little bit about the leadership team in the organization, and you made the comment about how people would go to a lunchroom when they were in a store and actually sit down with staff. Now, when I talk about the values of an organization, I often talk about the fact that it must be led from the top. And let's talk a little bit about that and how that fits with the values jam that you did.
So I think, in a lot of ways, it wasn't top-down driven. The values jam that you're talking about actually speaks to that, because we really started from our associates and asked them about, what did they feel that we really needed as part of our values, to be in order for us to be successful. And that didn't come from the top down. But what we did feel was it was important for our senior leadership to be setting the example of what that looks like. And as part of that exercise, it was important for them to be able to, step out and say, here's where, the values are, and this is how I'm living it, and here's where I feel that there's opportunities for me to continue to prove on. And being comfortable doing that, I think, is important. And that whole process started with our senior leadership, but it worked its way through our associate base, right down to our store associates, across the country.
Well, and I think the thing that's important for people to understand about values is not something you invent. They're real. And I think that what your organization did is, if I may, is the leadership started the process because they acknowledged that the organization could be better, could change, more reflective of what was happening in the competitive environment. But what they did was they acknowledged just how critical it was to make sure that the employee, the full organization, was involved. It couldn't just be something that they created in a vacuum. Mm-hmm. And so from my perspective, that's still part of being led from the top, because without that kind of leadership, that values jam would never have taken place. And so I think sometimes people get a little bit confused by, if I'm leading, does that mean I'm dictating? Right. And in this case, I think you've really shared a great example of, by being a leader, you were really open to listening and getting that kind of feedback. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the things that, so many leaders need to be more focused on, is the listening, and it's acknowledging that I don't know it all. Any examples of how you folks have really implemented ways in which the organization is able to, implement new and different ideas that maybe didn't come out of the executive suite?
Yeah, we actually have a site where associates are able to submit ideas. And it's a Bright Ideas site where, associates feel that they have sales ideas, associate engagement ideas that they want to pass on and feel would be successful for the company. They can submit them. And we have a number of ideas, and many of our ideas come from this Bright Ideas site that we end up rolling out nationally. One example, recently I was out west, and one of our stores had come up with a creative tech idea on creating protector for tablets.
Right.
And who doesn't need a protector on their tablet when you're using it for everything every day? And they came up with a No Troubles, No Bubbles initiative where they would install a screen protector on the tablet. And that idea in itself was submitted as a Bright Idea, and we just recently launched that as a national initiative for all of our stores, which came out of 2 associates in one of our Vernon stores.
Right,
which is awesome
over lunch one day, because they'd seen a problem on the front line and they identified it, and frankly the executive would never have known about that being a problem. Probably.
And without this avenue, I think it really limits the potential opportunities and ideas that are happening in our stores. And really, our stores are the ones that are hearing what our customers need. So it's very easy for them to say, you know what, they have a problem, let's figure out how to solve it. And this is a great example of how associates have done that, and we've recognized that that's an opportunity for all of our stores to be able to offer.
So when someone comes up with an idea like that, walk me through a little bit about how the process is and maybe how they're recognized for, that contribution to the organization.
So it really depends on the idea. So every idea is submitted through a site, and there's a committee that goes through and filters all the ideas.
So every idea is a good idea to start.
Yeah, every idea is a good idea to start. And then it goes through a filter of understanding, what is the business benefit, or the business benefit and the payback. And at that point, there's a decision made whether this is something we want to kind of move up the chain and say, okay, this is a good idea, there's potential, it hits the criteria that we feel as an organization we want to go after. If that case it's decided that this is something we want to move on, it goes to another committee where they make a decision as to if this is something we want to roll out nationally. And we reward our associates for that. So it can be anywhere from a $25 gift card for an idea that we decide is a good idea, but it's not something we feel that we can really implement nationally, to $2,500, where if we decide that this is something that we want to roll out nationally. So there is a reward from a monetary side, but there's also the recognition, obviously, which I believe goes a lot further as far as those ideas coming from our associates and being able to call them out on the great efforts they make in trying to make the company successful. Well,
one of my personal beliefs is that recognition is probably one of the most powerful tools in the executive toolkit. I call it the performance accelerator because I believe that it accelerates performance. Tell me a little bit about, or share with us what the recognition program at Staples looks and feels like.
We have a number of different things we do to recognize our associates. One of the things that we do is we have a superstar program every month where every store has an opportunity to recognize an associate on the team who they feel has really stood out in delivering on the company's goals and focuses, and they're rewarded based on them being nominated. We also have an associate recognition kit that every store is given and every manager is given, where they're able to recognize the great behavior or great results or great efforts or initiative on from our associates. And those are anything from gift cards to a thank you card to a appreciate your efforts card. And we try to create it as a kit to make it easy, that we can do it anytime, on the fly, when it happens, rather than feeling like you have to go through this mundane process to try to recognize somebody. We also have corporate awards where we recognize whether it's performance in service, in results, in community efforts. There's a number of awards that we have from a national perspective. But I think it does come down to a lot of the making sure that we recognize things when they're happening in the moment. I think those could tend to go a lot longer way and make a bigger difference.
Well, and you would know that because you started out. You didn't sort of just get parachuted in a head office. You started out in the stores, and you were really on the front lines of managing people. When you recognize people, so far what you've talked about are, things like ideas and things that really reflect on the business of the organization. Tell me how recognition ties back into the values and the corporate culture of the organization.
Well, I think one of the things that we're trying to do with the rollout that we're doing with our new values is we've created, these simple cards. And really, it's a way to be able to identify people that are, showing those values that we're trying to embed within the culture. So, one of the examples is we have as our values is owning it, and that's really, taking accountability, stepping up, being that entrepreneur. So I see that as an opportunity to really, show some recognition around someone who's done that and being able to say, you know what, you've done that for the organization in this way, and that really speaks to this value. So really allowing them to connect what they're doing to what the values are, because I think that ultimately will really make the difference in people living that every day.
Well, and I think that that's one of the key things that recognition programs that are not well formed forget, is that it's all well and good for me to see a great job. I mean, we all like to be told great job. But when it really becomes a powerful tool is when you're able to define what the great job was about. It's done in a timely manner. There's no point in telling me I did a great job 6 months ago. I want to know about it right away. It needs to be relevant to what I've done. It needs to be very specific, and it needs to be tied into something so that you know, I know the behavior that's being recognized, and equally importantly, the folks within the organization that sort of see me being recognized go, aha, when I do that, I'll get recognized too. Mm-hmm. So if we were giving people a little bit of advice on what to include in a recognition kit, in addition to cards that are well aligned with your values, what are some of the other things that you would suggest to someone who maybe is in a little bit smaller kind of a work environment that's trying to build their first recognition program?
I think that, you know, the key is you know, just, you know, even if it's reminders or just having it in your hand, you know, having it in your bag, you know, as a district manager, when you're doing your visits, having them accessible to you so that you're using it on a regular basis. You know, not waiting till you know, come across an example, but looking for those opportunities to really recognize people's efforts proactively. Rather than reacting after the fact. I think that goes a long way. So whether it's, you know, a card or it's a gift card, I think it's really irrelevant. I think it really comes down to you know, proactively looking for those opportunities where you can recognize associates doing the right things and encouraging that behavior.
Yep, and on that final thought, which the one thing that you pointed out that I think is so important to remember is that recognition doesn't have to always have a cost associated with it. Recognition is about recognizing someone verbally or through a card that they've done something well. It's not about just giving money. So on that note, let's take another break and we'll come back.